Hi, welcome to the Intro to 3D lesson. We will concentrate on solid modeling. There's a lot to this topic, and if you look at the class topics list, okay, there's a lot to cover, and that's a good thing because 3D is fun, and the more you understand it, the easier and funner it gets. I teach at another school, and I have about 10 classes to cover all of the 3D, just to give you a sense of how much information there is. What we learn today won't make us experts, but it'll get us off and running quite a bit. And the book does a really good job of covering this topic, so hopefully you'll dig into that a little bit. I've put all the page numbers. One thing to note is that we are now in the advanced portion of the book, which is the brown section, right? So that we've been working in the blue section all semester long, and now we're in the brown section. And this is paged according to what you'll see in there. All right. With that said, first thing we're going to do is AutoCAD out of the box, so to speak. When you install it, is not very proficient in the way it lays out your menu for drawing in 3D. I'd phrase it, it's not production ready. So what I'm going to do is show you to set up a workspace, and there is a workspace for 3D, which we'll see in a minute, but we're going to improve that. And in doing this, we're customizing AutoCAD a bit. And trust me, it will make 3D much more efficient. And once you see what we do, you almost can't live without it. So make sure you understand this and do this to your own laptops, and you'll have the same ability to draw and model efficiently. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm going to show you. Then we're going to do 3D primitives. They're simple shapes that act as building blocks. Think of sculptor starts out with a block of something and then chisels away to the final product. In a sense, we do the same. We build with common shapes and then refine them. And there's a lot of ways to view our models, and really topics 3 and 4 are related. They increase the efficiency of viewing it. Topic 5, one of the most important of the whole class. You're not going to get very far if you don't grasp that. And it's not rocket science, but you'll need to pay attention. And then the real modeling starts in the remainder of the lessons 6 through 9. And I'll probably have to split this up into at least 2 sections. So I'll shoot for 2, but I don't want to go more than 45, 50 minutes at a clip. The files become huge. All right, let's jump on in. So make sure you're in your AutoCAD screen. And let's go with topic 1, which is what's called workspace. Okay, what is a workspace? Well, you know what it is, you probably just don't realize you know what it is. We've been staring at the basic workspace all semester long, and this was meant for 2D drawing. So if I were to say, using the tools that you see here to draw in 3D, that's not going to be an easy thing. So we're going to change our workspace to one of the other ones that have been created for us, 3D, and then we're going to enhance that. The problem is, you're going to want to at times switch back to the 2D workspace when you're doing, general 2D drafting. And if you do that, you're going to lose any of the fine tweaks that you did to the screen. Why? Because when you switch to a workspace and then you come back to the original one, it recalls the last saved version of that. And I'm sure you never saved it because you didn't even know it existed. So before we go to the 3D workspace, let's resave this so that we don't have any disruption coming back to it. How we do that is down here in your status bar, all of the buttons, snaps and all that. If you keep looking further to the right, there's this little gear button. Okay, this is your workspace button. Select the little white downward triangle, and that's going to open up the list of your workspaces. And you can see that we have 3 of them. Now don't switch to any of the other 2. What we're going to do is save our current first. So select Save Current As. And when this dialog opens up, pop open the list and make sure you're selecting Drafting and Annotation. That's the one we're in right now. Just watch my screen. If you had any doubts, and I pop this list open, it's the one with the check mark. That is your current one. Okay, so let's resave that because we did make changes with our properties palette. You know, hopefully you docked your command prompt and so forth. All right, so I'm going to pop this open and select drafting and annotation, and just double check that that's what it is, and then click save. And it'll say, hey, it exists. Do you want to replace it? Select replace. Okay, so it only takes a second. All right, now we can go and switch over to the same button down in the corner, little gear. Switch over to the 3D modeling. Okay, the basics, it's okay. I don't tend to use it though. I go to the 3D modeling. There's more features in it. Okay, ignore that little toolbar. That's from something I was playing around with. Okay, so this is your 3D modeling interface, and you know, at first it's like, oh, geez, everything's different. And it isn't really. AutoCAD, 2D is still there. And I don't know why they do this, but they kind of shuffle it up a little bit. Right? So this is the draw panel, and it doesn't even look the same, but everything's there. Right? You've got modify, a couple of new tools in there. And here's your layers. Right? That's a little disorienting that it's over here now. And just a little tip. These panels are detachable. We're used to seeing the layers in the middle here. If you're insistent upon that, you can grab this, drag it out, and then just plop it right down in the middle, right? So if you were homesick for it, hey, there it is. Now, because I teach a lot of different classes, I need to put everything back where it was. Okay, so if you didn't see how I did that, when I select that, it says return panels to ribbon. That's what I selected. And interesting, it went back. It usually goes back to its original spot, but I'm going to put it back over here because I don't want to change it up too much. And I hope that's where it was. I didn't pay attention. Anyway, it was over there somewhere. Okay, so you're going to have to get used to some new tools. And if you click the second tab over, this used to be Draw, but now it's called Home. Oh, no, it used to be Home, but it was a whole different one. The next one is Solid, right? So you've got all kinds of solid tools, and surface modeling, and then mesh modeling, visualize, and so forth, right? So let's go back to Home. Now, you have to trust me on this. You won't realize it until we're doing it. But this layout is not very efficient. We're going to constantly be wanting to switch our viewpoints. We're going to want to shade things in, go back to wireframe, go to top view, and all of that is just clicking here, there, everywhere, the way it's set up now. I want to click things in one shot and have it always available on the screen. Okay? So what we're going to do is bring out a few toolbars that have always been there. You just, you never know they exist, and now I'm revealing it. Okay? And pay attention carefully what you have to type in, and you may even want to write this down. You have to type in the following, the dash button, right? And then the word tool bars with an S, okay? And I'm going to magnify that, okay? So you're typing in at your command prompt, toolbars. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's uppercase or lowercase. I might have the caps lock on, and I don't know why it did what it did. But anyway, toolbars. Type that in and press enter. And you look at your command prompt, it says enter the toolbar name. Well, there are literally dozens of toolbars, and if you don't get the spelling right, it rejects it, and that can be annoying. So what I'm going to do is let's type in the one that's easiest to remember. Simplest, easiest to remember, and it is simply the word draw. Just type in the word draw and press enter. And it asks us some stuff, and we don't even have to worry about what this is asking us. Just hit enter to go with the default. So it's actually draw, enter, enter. Now, I don't know if your draw came where mine came to be. I think yours actually goes on the left side, right? It docks on the left side of the screen. So yours was probably over there somewhere. Now, we don't even want that toolbar, but we're going to use that toolbar to bring out the ones we really want. Okay? So the ones we really want, and you'll see the whole list, there's many, many toolbars, you would access by putting your mouse on any one of these buttons. And these are all of your draw tools. So everything you see in this strip is the same as you would see in your draw panel. It's just arranged a little different. Anyway, put your mouse on any one of those buttons and right-click. And you get this monster list. These are all of the possible toolbars. If you brought all of these out, there'd be so many on the screen you wouldn't even see the drawing, right? So the idea here is you just bring out the ones you need. All right, so follow me closely. The first one that we're going to get is right here. It's called orbit. Right? Orbit. So I'm selecting orbit. And yours, because I've done this already, mine are coming back in a different spot. I'm going to relocate them where they approximately are on your screen so that we're all on the same page, so to speak. All right, so there's the first one, orbit. I'm going to right click, and we get that list again. And the next one we're going to get is called view. Right? View. It's all the way down near the bottom of my screen. So select view. Okay, and the view, I think, if I recall, is somewhere right around there. Okay, then right-click on a button again. And the next one that we want is not even visible, but all the way down at the bottom of this list is that black arrow. Click on the black arrow, like shows you the rest of them. Right? There's so many of them. And the next one we want is what's called visual styles. Okay, and that one, I think that one goes right on top of your orbit. Okay, so I'm gonna recreate that. These are the three basic ones that you want: orbit, view, visual styles. And let's put another one on here because this is more or less a helpful tip. Let's add the dimension toolbar in there. So I'm going to right-click and up near the top, dimension. And that's a big one. I think this one goes right into your ribbon. So all of a sudden, you're like, hey, where did it go? It's like camouflaged. But this one goes right in your ribbon area. All right. At any point in the future, if you think, hey, I think I could use one of those other toolbars, all you have to do is right-click on any existing one and grab another one. And I would recommend that you try that because if it saves you clicks, that's what it's all about. Now, we don't need the draw toolbar, and I don't want that on here. So all the way at the top are those little, looks like little ridges. I'm going to grab it by there and drag it out into my screen. And then I'm going to get rid of it, the little X to the far right. Okay, so do that. Now, we are going to dock our toolbars at the top of the screen, and at least for this lesson, do the same thing that I'm doing so that when I point out a command, we're all looking at the same thing, right? After this lesson, anywhere you want that you feel comfortable with, by all means do it. All right, so the first toolbar we're going to dock is the View toolbar. It's right here, okay? Now, with all those toolbars, how the heck do you even know which one's named which? Well, here's a tip. If you rest your mouse right on those little ridges, hold it still for a couple of seconds, it should come up and tell you what the name is. And of course, it's not on mine, but sometimes you have to hit escape and go off it and come back on it. There we go. Finally, View. So it'll tell you their names with just a little bit of patience and waiting. All right, so I want to take the View toolbar, and I'm going to put my mouse right on those little ridges. Now, watch carefully. Do this after me. When I move towards the corner, right, I'm going to go right, I'll show you where I'm going to go right in this area where these words are. As soon as I get really close, you're going to see the whole thing kind of shoot to the left. When you see that, let your mouse go, okay? All right, see how that's shot off to the left when I pull it back and then go back? When you see that, it's in the docked position, and release your mouse. Okay, now I'm going to put the next one, the orbit, and that's underneath here. So I got to kind of drag this away from it, and I'm going to go and put orbit right at the end of my View toolbar, and then the visual style after that, and then the dimension toolbar after that. All right, so we've got our 4 toolbars there. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is not mandatory. If you don't think you want to do this, then don't. But try it, and then if you don't like it, undo it. I'm going to make those toolbar buttons bigger. And certainly for the sake of you guys seeing it on my screen, that's probably a good idea. So I'm going to put my mouse down in the command prompt, the white space of the command prompt, and right-click. And in that menu, select Options. And the big dialog comes up. And I think I've shown you this once or twice, but this is like Mission Control Center for AutoCAD. Just be cautious what you change in here, because there's so many things you'll forget what it used to be, and now things are getting weird, and you don't know what to reset it to. So always make a mental note what the value of something was before you change it, so that if things go south, you can come back here and reset it. All right, so in here, there's one option that says use large buttons or toolbars. I'm going to click that. And I'm going to say, okay. And they get a lot bigger. Now, so big that I lost some of my dimension toolbar. It's off the screen that way. And you know what? I don't think I need those anyway. And if I do, I can get them from the menu. Okay? But for me, it's much easier to see. And hopefully, more importantly, easier for you guys to see. All right. The last thing I'm going to do, actually, there's two more things we're going to do to get this thing production ready, is at the bottom of the screen is my floating command prompt. And I don't like it floating because many commands have 2 to 3 lines and you don't see them if it's floating. You'll see them temporarily with the white text, but it goes away right away. So I'm going to dock that. And if you forget how to dock that, all the way to the left, those little dotted lines there. And this is like a toolbar, right? I'm going to hold my mouse button down on it and just move down slightly until you see the whole bottom outline, and then release. So now my command prompt is docked. And what's the last thing we need is our properties palette. And you definitely want that out for 3D drawing. Now, because my menu is all different, usually you saw a panel that said properties and that little down-facing arrow. That's not here. Okay, so we have to find it with Plan B. And Plan B for properties is it's in your View tab. Okay? So select View in the ribbon. And then almost right below, a little bit to the left, you see Properties. So select Properties. And if it came out where it usually does, great. If it came out over here on the left, just drag it over and dock it on the right. All right, so we are ready to go. This is, part 1 workspace is done. We've got our toolbars. We've rearranged the screen. And the last and final thing we want to do is resave this workspace. But we're going to give it a different name, right? You don't have to go with the same names. As a matter of fact, I want to leave my 3D model intact. All right, so to do that, we're going to go back to the workspace button and the little down arrow. And I'm going to select Save Current As. But we're going to give it a new name. I'm not going to select anything in the list. And I'm just going to call it my name, Matt 3D. Okay, so call it your name, 3D, and then select Save. All right, and now just for the heck of it, go to your list of workspaces, and you'll see the new one is now added. Go back to Drafting and Annotation, right, and it'll reset the whole thing to what we saw at the start of the session. And then let's go back and reset the 3 Matt's, or, your 3D. Okay? So, another added functionality for you. And what's neat about this is, depending on different types of drawings you use, you might want different toolbars out or different screen setups, and you can save those with each workspace. I know in industry, some people might share the same computer, and you like your toolbar there, they like their toolbar there, and you can get, have your cake and eat it, so to speak, by setting up your screen, saving that workspace, having them set up their screen, save their workspace, and all you do is switch. All right, so with that said, let's jump on into 3D. So the first thing I want to show you with 3D is that we're going to have building blocks, what's called primitives, solid primitives, right? So this is the section we're in. If you have your book, go to page 23, and you'll see there are more pictures than what I'm going to show you. So that's this next slide over here. Let me just increase the size of that. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8 basic primitives: box, cylinder, cone, polysolid, pyramid, sphere, center, torus, and wedge. And this is the page 23. Now, yes, these are primitive, but as you use the tools to draw these, you'll see that they have additional options within each one to make even more complex shapes. For example, a pyramid, you think of a 4-sided shape, right? Well, there's an option in there that you get to put how many sides you want, right? Number of sides. A cylinder, you can also make elliptical. Okay? And the cone and the pyramid, you can what's called truncate the top, so it doesn't come no point. It's flattened out. Okay? And the torus, by changing some of the options, you can get that to look like a football. All right, but a torus, think of that as a tire tube or an inner tube, and it's got a hole in the middle, and it's just like a donut, right? It's round. But with messing with the options, you can get different shapes from it. Okay, so point is it goes beyond this, but these are the primitive shapes. Okay, so let's experiment, and we'll get a lot of the basics down pat, and then we'll move on. So what I want you to do in the ribbon is let's select home to get back to the original configuration, and all the way to the left where it says modeling, this list on your left, you see where it says box, click that. This is the list of those primitives. And in this list, what I want you to do is to select box, box, and bring your mouse into the screen, into the center of it, and keep an eye on the command prompt. What this will start out by doing is as if we're drawing a rectangle. It wants one corner, we specify the other corner. So let's just click to locate a corner, move your mouse, up and to the right, and let's say at 5, 3, right? At 5, 3, and then hit enter. Despite the fact that the rectangle looks like it's shooting off to the left, just type in at 5, 3, enter, right? And normally we'd be done, but if you look at your command prompt, now it's asking for the height, right? Because this is now 3D. Let's say we'll go 3 inches tall. So type in 3, enter. Okay. Now, this doesn't look any different than a rectangle, but we can't tell the height of this because it's growing straight at us. So what we can do, which is neat, is we can look at this from different angles. And the easiest way to do that is with my view toolbar. I have all of these preset angles. The first 6 are my orthographic. And what we're in right now is top. We're looking at it straight down. So the shaded surface is the surface you'd be looking at. Okay, so we have top, bottom, left, right, front, back, and then isometric views. So for 3D, the isometrics are the most common. And what I want to do, and of those 4, the most common is what's called southwest isometric. Now, if you rest your mouse on there, you're going to see it says SE isometric for southeast. So go ahead and click that. All right. Now, it always does a zoom extents, whichever one of those you click. So I'm looking at this from the southeast. It's a wireframe box, and it can be a little confusing because this line goes all the way through, and that can be disorienting if your visualization is not, in tune, so to speak. So what we would want to do is shade this model in so that it doesn't look like a wireframe, and that's where my visual styles toolbar comes in. And right now we're in 2D wireframe. If you rest your mouse on this button, it'll say 2D wireframe. Right? What I want to do is all the way on the other end of that, the orange sphere, which is conceptual visual style. Go ahead and click that, and it's going to paint it in. And it paints it in with a kind of a quasi-fake light source. The light source is above and to the left, so that's why this space here is a little bit dark. Okay? And since it's up higher, this would be the brightest. Okay, let's say I want to look at it from the southwest. Right now we're in this one, and I want to look at it from the southwest, so I'm going to click that one. Go ahead and click the first isometric view, and it just spins around and looks at it from that viewpoint. So now this is the dark side, right? And this is a little lighter, and the top being the brightest because the light is above coming down. Okay, so you could look at any different viewpoint, but it gets confusing because it's a basic rectangle. Which direction am I looking at if you just walked in the room? Well, enter the UCS icon. This is very important now. This is going to be like a lost person in the woods with a compass. They need to go north. How do they know where north is without the compass? So if you look at that, Z, or your thickness, is always going to be pointing off out of the ground, and it's really the X and the Y that you want to understand. Normally, this is what we see, right? This would be X, and this would be Y, okay? But in my case, I'm looking at this from a whole different viewpoint, right? I'm looking at this from a crazy direction. I'm actually looking at it from the northwest. I'm up in Michigan looking at New Jersey, okay? So I don't know if that makes any sense, but to reorient yourself, go back to the top view, right? Spins it around the top, and then go back to southeast isometric. My recommendation is get used to southeast and then branch out, right? So you feel comfortable with one of them, and then you branch out from there. So now look at the icon, and hopefully that makes some sense that we're in the southeast. We're in Bermuda, looking up at New Jersey. Boy, do I wish I was in Bermuda. All right, so let's go back to the top view. And typically when you go to top view, your next move is you're going to zoom outward, right? So you're in too close. So move out a little bit like I did and pan so that that's in the middle of the screen. And let's draw another primitive. So I'm going to go back to where it says box, and let's go to cylinder. And I'm going to select cylinder. And a little bit, let's say a little bit above and slightly to the right, let's click. And if you look at your command prompt, before you click, it says, okay, specify center point. So it's like drawing a circle. I'm going to click here. And then just like a circle, it asks for radius. But if I right-click and select diameter, I now know I can type in the diameter. So let's say I want a 4-inch diameter, so 4, enter. And I want a height, which it's asking for. I want a 6-inch height. I'm going to say 6, enter. And again, doesn't look any different. Looks like it's a circle that's colored in. So let's go to a southeast isometric. Okay? And now we see that it has height. Now go to 2D wireframe. And you can see that this circle, where it gets its name from, primitive, it's actually 2 circles that are like held up. The upper circle is held up by 4 pieces of wire. Now it doesn't look like 4 because the back ones are in direct alignment with the front ones. Now, after a while, these isometric views get a little limiting and you want to fine tune this some more. So let's go back to conceptual shading, which is right here. These are the 2 that we'll use the most, right? Conceptual, wireframe. We'll get into these others in a minute here. But, all right, so let's go back to conceptual. And what I want you to do, let's put a different color on this. Light gets a little boring after a while. So I'm going to select that cylinder. And in your property where it says color at the very top, I'm going to click the word by layer. And I'm going to open that up. I have to click it twice, actually. And without even clicking, if you just run your mouse down the line, you'll see you can instantly change its colors. All right, so go ahead and give it a different color. Click on it. And bring your mouse back in and hit escape. And, if anything, it looks more interesting or, less boring. Now, I might want to fine-tune my viewpoint instead of just these orthographic or isometrics. And that we're going to do with orbit. Okay? And this is the orbit toolbars. Too much. So there's 3 different ways of orbiting, but by and far, the first one is the most functional and popular. Okay? So let's select this orbit. When you rest your mouse on it, it's called constrained orbit. So click that. When you bring your mouse into the screen, you've got that same symbol on your cursor. Now, how you use this is simply press and hold your pick button down. So the left click button. Hold that down, and just while that's down, move your mouse around. Okay? And it's almost as if you have it in your hand, and you're able to look at that from any direction. So it's kind of neat. So now you can really fine-tune your viewpoint. Okay, so when you're all said and done, right-click and select exit. Okay, so that's how we're going to navigate around. Before long, you won't even be thinking of it. You'll hear me say later on in the lesson, give me a top view, conceptual. No, now go to a southwest 2D wireframe. Go back to top view, 2D wireframe, southeast, conceptual, right? And you'll get faster and faster at that. But that's how we quickly navigate. So you want to practice to where you're not even thinking about it. If I go into orbit, moving around, right-click exit, go to 2D wireframe. Let's say we go to orbit again, right-click exit, southeast, conceptual. Right? So just get those commands worked out. All right. So go over to the next button and select realistic. And when I click realistic, it deepens it and gives you more highlighting. Okay? So the colors colors got a little muted, but the quality increased a little bit. Now, as you're modeling, typically you don't use that. You use the conceptual because realistic takes more horsepower and your computer may slow down and so forth. And darker colors get too dark. So the conceptual keeps things bright and very easy to see. The other thing is, in next class and the final class, we're going to be adding materials to these surfaces. So it'll look like real. It'll look like chrome or brass or wood or plastic, whatever. And you will only see those materials in the realistic shade mode. Okay? So we don't need this now, but we have to have it in the next two classes. All right, the next one over, it says 3D hidden. So if I click that, it just hides the surfaces that you wouldn't see. Okay, but it keeps it like a wireframe. And then the next one is 3D wireframe visual style. And honestly, I don't see much of a difference between this 3D visual style and the 2D visual style. I mean, if you look close, it gets brighter, darker, but the things wind up looking the same. And one of these days I'll crack open the book and maybe find out what the differences are. But I find myself just going to 2D wire. All right. So there's the navigation modes. And again, that's an integral thing to manipulating and modifying. All right. With that said, let's make sure when all is said and done, you're in 2D wireframe, and let's move off to the side, and we're going to draw our next shape, our next primitive, while we're in 3D. And you know what? What the heck? Let's go to the conceptual, and we'll create the shape. We'll create the shape in this conceptual shade mode. All right. We will go to the list of primitives. So open them up again. And do not click, for a reason I'll tell you in a second, but bring your mouse down and rest it on wedge. And you'll see after a couple of seconds, a secondary dialog opens. And I wanted to point something out in this to you. Notice the order in which you have to create this. Okay? You click opposite corners at the base of the wedge, and the first click you make, where it says number 1, will be the side of the wedge that's going to be vertical. Okay, so if I wanted the right side of this wedge to be vertical, I couldn't do it if I clicked on the left first. So you just have to keep that in mind. What is the vertical side of the wedge? That's the point I have to click in first. All right, with that said, go ahead and click the wedge. Bring your mouse off to the right and click, okay, and then move out. And let's say we'll do a 5x3 again. So say at 5, 3, enter. And now lift your mouse up, and again, that's where you could see the vertical side. And let's say I want it to go up 4 inches. So say 4 inches. Now, let's say I want the opposite of that. I want another wedge going down the other side. Well, I could go back to wedge and create it, or this is AutoCAD. I can mirror it. So just to keep these commands mixed in here, I'm going to go. Notice mirror is not visible in the top, so we have to pop open. And you'll see some of these commands you're so used to where they are not there anymore. So we have to get to mirror in the bottom half. So go ahead and click mirror. Okay, select your wedge and press enter. And then select, let's say, this bottom front corner here, and then move your mouse either, along the y-axis, either in that direction or in that direction, so that you see the other half spin around. And when you see it, click. And do we want to erase source objects? No, which is what's default. So I'm pressing enter to accept that. Okay, so we've got some shapes going. All right, let's say I want to put a wedge on top of this box, and I want the wedge to be up like this and go down that way. Okay, so that will be the wedge, and that means that I have to pick on the midpoint of this box. And once I get the midpoint, I'm not even going to type in a size. I'm just going to come over here and snap to that side. Now, this may not work, and the reason being because we didn't learn it yet. So listen to me carefully. So we're going to go back and pick wedge. As soon as you pick wedge, put your mouse on the top shape. Now, the top shape should highlight like mine. Okay? So where this could be a problem is if you approach it from this way and the side of the box was highlighted when you snap to the midpoint. That would be a problem, right? Trust me, we didn't learn it yet, but we will. So bring your mouse into the top, go to the midpoint and click, and then go to the opposite corner and click, and then lift your mouse up. I'm glad that happened because this too might happen, and it may not have happened to you. It's funny when we're all in class, maybe, if there's 20 people, 17 of them it worked fine, the other 3, it's like me right now, it did this. And that's because this is probably a square, right? And it doesn't know, that side that we clicked in is the same vertical side for this, this, which I originally drew coming down that way, or this, like it's trying to do now. So for me, I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to try this again. If yours worked, I'll lift it up and give me a 1.5-inch height. Okay? So if not, like me, I'm going to click wedge. I'm going to try this back corner. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. I'll first make sure the top is highlighted, and then click here. I'm going to come over to here. There we go. So, couldn't tell you why, but I know because I've done this enough, you just try a different side, and you're usually okay. All right, so I want a 1.5-inch height, so 1.5, enter. All right. So there's, playing around with some solids. We have the ability to modify these shapes to some degree. For example, go back to the cylinder and click on it, and you get grips on the quadrant points around the base and at the top. Hard to see there, but, oh no, I'm sorry, it's just at the base. But at the top we have this up arrow. Now, without clicking any of them, if you look in your properties, we have the ability to change the radius, the height, okay? So without touching anything, I could just type in those numbers. All right, so for the sake of this, I could click on this grip and just move this, let's say, up. And let's say I want to add another inch on, just say 1 inch. Okay, so I forgot what it was. Oh, it was 6, and now it's 7. All right, so some ways to modify. All right, the next thing we're going to look at is we're all the way up to topic 5 already. So we did some experimenting with primitives. We did some viewing options, right? The preset viewpoints, which are the 6 and then the 4 ISOs, and our orbit, and then the shade mode. So those right there are all we really need to know now, and that covers most of how you're going to be modifying and manipulating the viewpoints. Okay, so let's go to topic 5, which is the user coordinate system. Again, to me, this is one of the most important topics, so follow with me closely. And I have a little exercise for you to do. So in this scenario, we have our z-axis going straight up. And that means we can only define height along that z-axis, meaning upwards. But what if I wanted to create a shape that was, let's say, a square shape on the side of this box, and that shape should go outward, right? It should protrude outward from the side of that box. I cannot do that unless I draw, hovering in space, the base of this and then extrude it upward. I could do that, but there's a much easier way. Okay? So we need to manipulate the user coordinate system. And, notice your cursor is mimicking, this is mimicking that, right? So we're going to need to be able to get control so we can do more extensive modeling with that regard. And really, once you master that, you can do a whole lot with that. And it's not hard, you just have to practice it and get used to it. All right, so we're going to use this 5x3x3 box that we drew earlier. And I'm going to zoom into that, and let's erase the wedge on top of it. Just click on it and hit delete. Now, let's say that I want to create a cylinder that is affixed to the side of this, and it's going to grow outward, okay? And I need the center of this cylinder to be in the center of the face of this box. So that's my requirements, and as far as the size and the length of that, we'll talk about in a second. All right, we need to do something to our UCS first before we can proceed, because there's a mode that's on right now that is going to fight what we want to do. it's like having all your O snaps on and trying to get somewhere. It just becomes less productive. And that mode was responsible for, let's say when we pick wedge and I said put your mouse on the top, that's highlighting that surface. There's an actual mode on that we don't want on. We have to shut that off, okay? And that mode is what's called dynamic UCS. We're going to learn this in a little bit, and we actually want this, but not now, okay? So we have to find that mode and then shut it off. So that mode is going to be in the bottom of your screen in the lower right corner, okay? And it is the 3 lines. Okay, so pick on those 3 lines. That's the customization button. And here it is right here, dynamic UCS. Now, mine's already on screen. It's already visible on screen, but yours is probably not. So if there's no check mark next to it, click it so that there is a check mark. And bring your mouse into the screen, click to dismiss that. Now, this is what that button is right here. So I'll magnify it. It's this guy right here. Now, don't worry about what it is or what it does yet, because we're going to come back to that. So that should not be on. Mine is on. Yours is probably on. Shut it off. So click that blue to shut it off. Okay? Now, we'll do one example of this, and then I'll probably stop the lesson and we'll pick it up in a part 2. So, try this. Go to the cylinder. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping the gun. We need to set up our UCS so that Z is no longer pointing upwards. We need Z to be pointing away from that face. Okay? We need Z to be perpendicular to that face. Only then will we be able to define height, and that becomes our new height. Okay? We're going to make that happen by activating what's called 3-point UCS. And if you look at where I'm highlighting here, magnifying, in this panel called coordinates, all of these tools are all to do the same thing a little bit differently, right? So there's a lot of ways that we can modify our UCS, okay? And the one we want is right here, the 3-point UCS. So, click that button, and you'll notice that the UCS becomes detached and it's floating on our cursor. Now, keep an eye on the command prompt. What it wants us to specify first is the new 000 point. And we're going to select the lower left corner of this face of the box. That'll be our new 00. So go ahead and just go right there and click it. Then look at your command prompt. It asks, what's the positive portion of the x-axis? For us, that's going to be right at this corner of the box, right? So come down with your mouse and click that corner. Okay, then it asks, what is the positive portion of the y-axis? And for us, that's going to be right above that lower left corner or right up here. So we're defining a right angle, and then AutoCAD says, okay, if that's your new drawing plane, then Z is going to be perpendicular to that, or pointing out away from it. And you'll see the whole grid changes, right? So it looks like we're looking through the screen door now to see the model. Now, when it asks for height, height is going to grow along that axis. All right, so zoom in closer to that face. Now, so you guys can see this faster, I'm going to change the color. See this easier. I'm going to change the color of the box by clicking on it and going up into my properties. And let's say I'm going to go with a green. Okay? And trust me, you'll know why I did that. So you can see picks easier. All right, so now here's the objective. We need to draw a cylinder, but define the center of the face of this as the center of the cylinder. Now, how we do this is not new. You hopefully have been doing this many times over the semester. We need to track off the midpoint of 2 surfaces, here and here. Okay? And we're doing this on a vertical plane instead of on the ground that we've been doing it all semester long, right? So when we touch here and come to the center, you'll see the little white X, and then we know we can click, okay? So let's try this. So I'm going to go to my primitives and select cylinder. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to touch the center point, the midpoint of that side, and I'm going to come down and touch the midpoint of here. And then I'm going to slowly move my mouse up along that grid or wherever yours might be. And when they both converge, as you hopefully can see now, it will show with the white X. And then I click. And when I move out, you'll see the base of the face of the circle is coplanar to the side of my box. Okay? So next thing it's asking is what's the radius? And we know we should right-click and say diameter. Okay, and I want the diameter to be 1.5 inches. So type in 1.5, enter. And then move your mouse away. Here's the new Z, or the new height. And I want the height of this cylinder to be 4. So I'm going to type in 4, enter. Okay, so I'm now adding a big capability. I don't have to always rely on Z being straight up and down to the ground plane. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now. We're going to pick it up from here, and we're going to draw another cylinder off the side here. So, so you guys start the second recording.